you're an individual or business looking to set up Google Ads conversion tracking, then stick around for this free course, which will teach you the fundamentals of how to set up conversion tracking for lead generation. So when you've created a brand new Google Tag Manager account and container, you'll get a pop-up to install Google Tag Manager. Hey guys, Patrick Simon from 𝗪𝗵𝘁, and welcome to Module 1 of Conversion Tracking Fundamentals for Lead Generation inside of Google Ads. So in this module, we will be covering the basics of Google Tag Manager. So as I mentioned in the introduction video, this whole course is split into 3 different parts. So part 1 will be the basics of Google Tag Manager, like I just mentioned, and then we'll move on to Google Ads conversion tracking for form submissions, and then enhanced conversions for web. So in this module, you will learn why Google Tag Manager is such an important tool when it comes to Google Ads. You will learn how to install Google Tag Manager on a website. And then finally, you will learn the difference between tags, triggers, and variables. So at the end of this module, you should be able to successfully install Google Tag Manager to your website. And then you should also know your way around the user interface for Google Tag Manager itself. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump in. What exactly are the benefits of Google Tag Manager? So Google Tag Manager only needs to be hard-coded onto a website one time. So if you ask a developer to install it on your behalf, they can do that for you. And then once they've deployed Google Tag Manager, you can then deploy whatever tags, triggers, and variables that you need to without having to directly go through a web developer every single time. So once you've installed it, it's kind of out of the way, and you can then have full control over what you deploy into a Google Tag Manager container. Google Tag Manager also keeps everything organized in one place, because Google Tag Manager is basically a container, and inside that container, you can put everything that you need to for conversion tracking and other stuff. Anytime you need to reference or adjust conversion tracking or whatever else you put in Google Tag Manager, it's all in a single location. Whereas if you hard coded everything into a website, it can be a bit tricky to find different pieces of code. Google Tag Manager makes that kind of an easy way to find what you need. And then finally, another benefit of Google Tag Manager is there's an easy way to deploy, test, and debug stuff like conversion tracking. So when you do deploy conversion tracking tags inside of Google Tag Manager, there's a way to debug it and test it to ensure that it actually works before you push it live, which we will go through in this course. Okay, so first things first, let's see how you can actually install Google Tag Manager on your website, and we'll do a walkthrough of that right now. Okay, so I am in Google Tag Manager right now, and the first step we need to do is to create an actual Google Tag Manager account and then create a container within that account. So for this, we'll just give it an example name. We'll just call this YouTube, keep the country as United Kingdom, and then here you can call the container whatever you want. So I'll just call it container. You can call it your website name, it doesn't really matter. And for target platform, we want to select a web container and then click create. Look at the terms and conditions, check the box, and then click yes. Okay, so when you've created a brand new Google Tag Manager account and container, you'll get a pop-up to install Google Tag Manager. So there are 2 snippets of code here that we need to deploy. So first, the first piece of code has to go in the head section of your website, and then the second piece of code needs to go into the body tag of your website. Now, the most important piece of code here is the head code. This has to be deployed to your website. The body code here is just a backup if someone's using like a script blocker, but it isn't necessary to run Google Tag Manager. Most of the time, it's just the head code that needs deploying. But with that said, I would deploy both of them just in case. Okay, so for this example of how to install Google Tag Manager, I'm going to use my WordPress website as the example, and I'm going to install the new account and container onto this platform. Now, obviously, depending on the content management system you use, this might look a bit differently. But if you don't know how to deploy some codes to your header or body section, then I would just do a quick Google search, and you should be able to find the instructions of how to do that. However, if you do use WordPress, then you can copy the exact method that I use and it should work just fine. So for WordPress, I use a plugin called 𝗪𝗵𝘁, which is just an easy way or an easy plugin to add and deploy codes to the areas of the website that I need to. Now, if I go into the code snippets plugin here, click on add snippet, and then if I add a custom snippet here, then I go back to the Google Tag Manager tab, and I will first copy the head section code here. So I can just click this icon, which will copy it to my clipboard. Go back to this WordPress tab, paste in the codes here, give the snippet a name. We'll just call this GTM head. Scroll down, and this should be deployed site-wide to the header. And then I can click Save Snippet. Activate it as well, so update that. And then I will add another one. Go back to the Google Tag Manager tab, and then copy the body section code. Paste it in, give it a name. So we'll call this GTM body. Make sure it's active, and then change this drop down here to site-wide body, like that. And then save the snippets. Okay, so now Google Tag Manager should be fully deployed to our website. Now, if I close down this drop down here, you'll see a ID here. So GTM-TR7C2CLP. So your container will have a unique identifier, which you can find here. If you want to see if Google Tag Manager is properly deployed to your website, one way to do that is to go directly to your website and then look at the source codes of the HTML. So I'm on my homepage at the moment, and if I right click and then go to View Page Source, and if I go back to my Google Tag Manager tab, and if I copy this ID here, go back to the source and then do Control F or Command F if you're on Mac. Paste in the GTM ID, you can see that it's finding a piece of HTML code here on my website with the exact identifier here. So this means that Google Tag Manager is deployed, and the codes that I copy and pasted from Google Tag Manager is actually correctly on the website and is loading up, which is great. Yeah, that's how you deploy Google Tag Manager on your website. It's super simple and straightforward. And now that we've installed it, we don't need to ever touch this piece of code again. It's pretty much set for life. Okay, so now that Google Tag Manager is correctly deployed on the website, we now need to understand what the differences between tags, triggers, and variables are inside of Google Tag Manager, because these are something that you will run into every single time you deploy conversion tracking or any other tool that Google Tag Manager offers. Okay, so let's first discuss what tags are. So tags are pieces of code that can be executed inside of Google Tag Manager. So for example, Google Ads conversion tag is one of many tags that you can find within the tool. You can create a custom tag yourself, or you can use templated tags like the Google Ads conversion tag. In most cases, you will be using templated tags that have been pre-created, normally by Google or other third parties. And also, or finally, tags cannot be executed without a trigger. So every single tag will have to be accompanied by a trigger. Okay, so what about triggers? So triggers are something that listens on your web page or web pages, and they wait for specific events to fire based on how you've configured a trigger. Now, events can be something like a form submission, a button click, a specific page URL, or a lot of other different things. So for example, if a form is submitted on a specific page of your website, we can have a trigger for that if we want a specific tag to fire. Okay, and finally, variables. So variables are placeholders that are populated with values when code is executed. And variables can be used in both tags and triggers. So a variable on a trigger is a defined set of filters that specify when a tag should be fired. So I might have a trigger that should fire when a URL contains a specific variable value, like my website /thank_you. So the trigger is when a URL contains, and then the variable would be example.com/thank_you in this case. Now a variable on a tag is used to capture dynamic values. So this can be a variety of different things, but one common example might be conversion value or revenue for a specific conversion action. So I might have a Google Ads conversion tag that fires, and I might want to pass the revenue of that specific conversion action of that specific customer back into Google Ads. So I might have a variable for that tag. Okay, so to make things a bit clearer, I've got an actual example of how a tag trigger setup might actually look like with variables. So for Google Ads, we might have a Google Ads conversion tag with a conversion ID variable, which will be the ID of the Google Ads conversion action we're tracking. That might also have a Google Ads conversion label, which is also a variable tied to the Google Ads conversion tag. So every Google Ads conversion action that you deploy inside of Google Tag Manager is always accompanied by a conversion ID variable and a conversion label variable, which we will go into further detail in the next module. And then finally, accompanied with the Google Ads conversion tag is a trigger. So the trigger in this example is a form submission trigger type. So when a form is submitted, so when they click that submit button on the form, the trigger checks if the page path equals /thank_you. And that is the variable that's paired with the trigger. So this is kind of a very basic setup you might see on a lot of Google Ads conversion tags. And it's actually the example we will be using in module 2 when we set up our own Google Ads conversion tracking. Okay, so we will be covering Google Tag Manager more in depth in the next module, but I figured I would show you quickly where the tags, triggers, and variables can be found in the UI. This is the homepage of Google Tag Manager, and on the left-hand side here, you can see a navigation where it has tags, triggers, and variables. So if I click on tags, it will take me into the tag section, and I can create a new tag here. And it will come with a configuration and triggering section. So if I click on tag configuration, I'll get a bunch of different pre-created tag types that we can use. So the Google Ads one is the one that we will be using in the next module. But for now, I'll just exit that. And same for the triggers. This sends us to the trigger section, and we can create a new trigger here. Click on trigger configuration, and we'll get a bunch of options of different trigger types that we can utilize. As you can see, there's one for form submission here, which we will cover in the next module. So exit this. And then finally, the variables section. So the Google Ads account comes with some pre-built-in variables here, like events, hostname, path, URL, page URL, and referrer. And if you click configure on the top right here, you can actually get some additional built-in variables if you need them. So click elements, click classes, click ID, click URL. These are good if you want to track like button clicks, for example. You might want to add these and they'll get added here. But again, for now, I'll leave them unchecked. And then finally, there is a section for user-defined variables if you want to create your own custom ones. So again, if I click on variable configuration, there's a bunch of different types of variables that I can create here, like so. Yeah, that's just a brief look at Google Tag Manager and where you can find the tags, triggers, and variables section. Now there is another section for folders and templates, but we will not be covering these in this course. And in general, you don't really touch these areas anyway. So yeah, we'll leave it. Now, if you remember when we set up the Google Ads conversion action in the Google Ads UI, we got the conversion ID and the form submission here. Hey guys, Patrick Sam here from 𝗪𝗪𝘁, and welcome to module 2 of the conversion tracking fundamentals for lead generation inside of Google Ads. So in this module, we are going to be covering Google Ads conversion tracking for form submissions. Now, when it comes to lead generation, in most cases, leads will come from form submissions. Yes, there are phone calls and other areas like live chats that people could come from as a potential lead. But since form submissions is normally the main method that businesses acquire leads, we will be covering that in this module. Okay, so a quick recap of what this 3-part course will be covering. In part 1, we already went over the basics of Google Tag Manager. In part 2, we are going to go over Google Ads conversion tracking for form submissions. And then in part 3, we will be covering enhanced conversions for web. Okay, so in module 2, you will learn how to create a new conversion action from scratch within the Google Ads UI. You will learn how to track a form submission using Google Tag Manager by deploying a certain tag type alongside the correct triggers and the variables. And then finally, you should be able to debug and test that the conversion tracking tag that we do implement actually works and sends the correct data back to Google Ads when you run your ads. So at the end of module 2, you should be able to understand how conversions actually work inside of Google Ads, how tags, triggers, and variables interact with each other inside of Google Tag Manager, and then finally how to use the Google Tag Manager preview mode for troubleshooting. So yeah, let's jump in. Okay, so the first step is to create a new conversion action within inside the Google Ads UI. So let's do a walkthrough and see how you can actually do that. Okay, so the first thing you want to do on the Google Ads UI is to go to the goals section on the left-hand navigation bar, which will take you to your conversions page. And the next thing you want to do is to click the Create Conversion Action button here, and then you want to select Website Conversion. Now type in your domain name. So in my case, it's https 𝗪𝗏𝗁𝗏.co.uk. Click Scan, and it will check if you have Google Tag Manager installed in your website. Then get a pop-up like so, and you'll get an option to either add a conversion action manually or to save and continue. Since we want full control and we don't want to give control over to Google, we will add a conversion action manually by clicking this. And then you'll get a pop-up. So the first field, goal action and optimization, you'll select a category where your conversion action will be placed into. Now this doesn't actually affect how your conversion action will behave. It's more like an organization thing. So just pick the category that is most relevant to the conversion action that you are creating. Since this example will be for form submissions, we will go with the submit to lead form category in the leads category section here, like that. And then conversion action optimization options. So we can select if it's a primary action or a secondary action. If you don't know what the difference is between a primary and secondary conversion action, I do have a video on that, but to break it down briefly, a primary action is used to optimize towards your campaign goals. So Google's algorithms will use data that is from a primary conversion. You can have multiple primary conversions, so do be careful when you select this option here. Because it's a form submission and it's an important action for our business, we will keep it as primary. But if it's like an action that's maybe a micro conversion, so something that you want to track but is not super important to your business and you don't want Google's algorithms to optimize towards it, then you can set it as a secondary action here. And Google does give you the definition here if you are not sure what a primary and secondary conversion actions are, or is, sorry. So yeah, you can also read this box here. But again, as I mentioned, we'll keep this as primary. Next, we want to set the conversion name. You can call it whatever you want. We'll just call it form submission to keep it nice and simple. And then next is the value box. So you can actually send some revenue details back to Google based on the conversion action here. So you could use the same value for each conversion. So maybe I value a form submission at £100 per form submission. So every time a conversion action is logged, Google will attribute £100 to that conversion action and campaign or campaigns that got that form submission. Or you could use different values for each conversion. If you pick this, then you will need to dynamically upload the revenue or send the revenue to Google, which you can do through Google Tag Manager. And if it doesn't send any value over, you can have a fallback default value here of, in this case, £100, but we could change this to 200, be set to whatever you want. Or alternatively, you can just not send a revenue option or value option here if it's not relevant for this specific conversion action. In this case, I don't know how much a form submission is worth because this is just a test or an example that I'm going through for this course. So I'm just going to select it as don't use a value for this conversion action. So it will always send over the value as 0. The next section is the count section. So how many times you want to count a conversion action for an individual. So you can either select for one person can have multiple conversion actions, or you can just have it as one person will only ever be counted as one conversion action. So this is more for like e-commerce where you would have conversions counted every single time for one individual. So let's say a person comes to your ads, they maybe purchase a product. We would count that as, a purchase conversion action. And again, maybe let's say 2 weeks later or a month later, they might again convert on our website and make a second purchase. And again, if we're still tracking a cookie, we would ideally want to still track that conversion action. So that would be 2 actions for one individual, which is something you would want to do for e-commerce. However, since this is for lead generation, in most cases, you only ever want to track one form submission for a single individual. It's very rare would you want an individual to send multiple form submissions if it's for the same product or service, because chances are they're just inflating your number of conversions for form submissions. So when it comes to lead generation, I would suggest just keeping it as 1 here. And then for click-through conversion window, it's set to 30 days by default. I recommend setting it to the maximum, which is 90 days, just so you can capture some extra data. For engaged view-through conversion window and view-through conversion window, I would just keep them as 3 days and 1 day respectively. And then for attribution, I would keep it as the recommended data-driven, but you can also set it as last click if you want to, but these days no one uses last click. It's just better to have data-driven. Enhanced conversions, which we'll cover in the next module, but this is already ticked here, which is great. And then we'll finally click done, and we will be able to create this conversion action. And then click save and continue here, and you can see we've got that conversion that we just made there. And then you'll get another set of instructions here. So you can set up with a Google tag, email instructions to your webmaster, or use Google Tag Manager. So you want to click in this tab here, use Google Tag Manager, and it will present you with some important information here. So it's given us a conversion ID and a form submission, or this is also called a conversion label inside of Google Tag Manager. So these 2 pieces of information are necessary to create a conversion tracking tag within Google Tag Manager, which we will jump into next. Okay, so tracking form submissions inside of Google Tag Manager. How do we now set up conversion tracking for the conversion action that we just created inside of the Google Ads UI? So let's jump into Google Tag Manager and the form that I've created for demonstration purposes to see how we can set this up. Okay, so this is the basic form we're going to be setting up Google Ads conversion tracking for. As you can see, it's just 3 simple fields, a name, email, and message. So to set this up in Google Tag Manager, the first thing we need to do is to create a new tag. We're going to actually create 2 tags. So for this one, we're going to call this one conversion linker. Click on tag configuration, and then we'll get a library of pre-made tags. You want to click on Google Ads, and you want to click on conversion linker. Alternatively, you can just click on conversion linker here if you want to, like so. So conversion linker is used by Google to create a first-party cookie when people come from a Google Ads and go to your landing page. It's a way for Google to identify where the click has come from and who actually clicked the ads, and it's used to also attribute back to your conversion actions. It's something you need on every single Google Ads account. Always make sure you have a conversion linker tag deployed inside of your Google Tag Manager before you even set up any other conversion tag types. So we created a conversion linker tag here. And the next thing we want to do is to create a trigger. So in the trigger, we have some pre-made triggers here, like all pages. So for this one, we can just select either all pages, or you can select one of the other ones. If you have like a cookie banner set up, you might use consent initialization. But for this example, we'll just use the all pages trigger, like so, and then click save. So this conversion linker tag now will always be fired on every single page on your website. It won't actually work at the moment because we haven't submitted the changes to the Google Tag Manager container yet, but it's basically ready to go. Okay, so now we need to make a second Google Ads tag, or sorry, second tag for Google Ads conversion tracking. And for this tag, we can call it Google Ads -form submissions. Again, click on tag configuration. Click on Google Ads this time. And for this, we want to create a Google Ads conversion tracking tag. So you'll get a bunch of different fields here. Some are optional, some are compulsory. Don't feel too overwhelmed because we'll go through them right now. Now, if you remember, when we set up the Google Ads conversion action in the Google Ads UI, we got the conversion ID and the form submission here. So if I just copy the conversion ID, go back to here, you can see there's a conversion ID field here, which is actually this ID, which I just copied over. And then you also want to copy the form submission ID here, which is also known as the conversion label inside of Google Tag Manager. So when this tag fires, it sends this ID and conversion label back over to Google Ads, so it can identify which conversion action needs to be counted in the Google Ads UI. So these two fields are compulsory and must be filled in order for your conversion ads tracking to work correctly. Now, these other fields like transaction ID, currency codes, conversion value, these are all optional and don't need to be filled in. So we'll leave those for now. Now, there is a better way to fill in conversion ID and conversion label if you plan to create multiple Google Ads conversion tags, which I'll show you right now. For now, I'll just save this. There's no trigger, which is why it's getting this pop-up, but I'll just click Save Tag because we will come back to it. Okay, so if I go to the variables section, and then if I go to user-defined variables and create new user-defined variable, and for this I can call it conversion ID, click on variable configuration, and then if you go to utility section and click on constant, so the value is set to the string that you provide. Now if I go back to the Google Ads conversion action tab, and if I copy the conversion ID here again and then paste in the value, this value will now be stored in a variable called conversion ID, and then click save. Now if I go back to my tag, if I go back to the Google Ads form submissions tag that we made, edit this, and if I delete the conversion ID from here, and I click on this Lego block here with the plus icon, I can actually find the conversion ID variable that I just made. And if I click on that, this field will populate with the conversion ID variable that we just pasted in, which is this value here. Now, the conversion ID always remains the same for your Google Ads account. Unless you're using multiple Google Ads accounts, the ID should always be the same. So it makes more sense to create a variable for it if you have multiple conversion tags inside of Google Tag Manager. We don't need to really make a variable for the conversion label because the conversion label is unique to a conversion action. So if I have multiple conversion tags inside of Google Tag Manager for different conversion actions, this ID will always be different. So we don't really need to make a variable for it, though you could if you wanted to. Yeah, but now we've done that, let's click save there. Again, we'll just save tag. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to create a trigger. Now you can create a trigger by going to the trigger section here, or you can actually go back to the tag we just made and then add a trigger here. But for now, I'll just use the triggers page to make the trigger that I need to. So I'll click on new, and I'll name this trigger to form submissions. Click on edit. And now I need to select a trigger type. So for this trigger type, I will create a form submission trigger. So this trigger type will look for when a form is actually submitted. Now this can be fired in all forms or for some forms. So for this example, I'm going to do some forms, and you want to set this to page path and then contains, and the URL of this page is this here, 𝗪𝗏𝗁𝗁.co.uk/GTM. But since this is page path, it only needs to look for everything after .co.uk, which in this case will be /GTM. So this trigger will look for when a form is submitted and when a page path contains the page path of /GTM, which is where the form is located. I could again have it run on all forms if I wanted to, but since we're only tracking one single form that's on one single page, we'll keep the trigger as this. And again, we'll click save. And now what we need to do is we need to add this trigger to the tag we just made. So we'll go back to the Google Ads form submissions conversion tracking tag. We'll go to the triggering section, click on edit, and then we click on the form submissions trigger that we just made. And as you can see here, the name is here, the type of trigger that it is, and then the filter, which is the one we just made, which is contains page path contains GTM. Click on that. And now we have a Google Ads conversion tag that has a trigger. And now we just need to save this. Okay, so now that our tags are ready to go, the next step is to preview the container to ensure that things are actually working correctly before we push them live through the submit button to the live container. So the next step is to click the preview button, which will open up a new tab. And then we want to paste in the URL of the form of where the form is located, which is @roughly.co.uk/GTM in this example case, and then you click connect. And as you can see here, it's opened up the landing page with the form on, and we've got a button here called Tag Assistance. And then finally, you'll have another tab with the Tag Assistance live preview mode. So you can see a bunch of information here gets shown when you are in the Google Tag Manager preview mode. So if I click on this GTM-roughly, which is the roughly page, or sorry, it's the page where the form is. So roughly.co.uk/GTM. If you look here, the output section, you can see that one tag has already fired here, which is the conversion link tag that we just created earlier. And as you can see here, the second tag that we created, the Google Ads form submissions tag, has not been fired yet because we haven't actually filled out the form and submitted it yet. So this right now is currently working as intended because the conversion linker should always be firing regardless of what page it is. So let's fill in the form with a test submission and see what happens in the debug tab. So we'll just put this as test, email, test@roughly.co.uk, and we'll have the message of hello. And then I'll click submit. Your message has been received. Now, if I go back to Tag Assistant, you can see that some additional fields here have been fired. So we've got form start, form submit, form submit. So as you can see here on this form submit, the tag of form submissions, the Google Ads tag, fired because a form was actually submitted. So if I click on this tag here, I can further look into the details. As you can see here, there's a bunch of information about this Google Ads tag. If I click and show more here, you can see the additional information like the conversion ID of this tag and the conversion label. And as you can see, these match the strings here that were on the Google Ads UI. So 164 and then form submission, which is the conversion label, is 𝗪𝗵𝘁'. So if I go back here, you can see it matches 164, 𝗪𝗵𝘁'. So this is actually correct. So as you can see, we go to the landing page, we submit a form, and you can see that the Google Ads form submission gets fired once the form submit happens. So if I go back to the overview for this whole landing page, both tags have now fired. And if I go back to this form page, refresh it here, go back to the preview modes, I'll get a second summary page here because it's now loaded another session for this landing page. As you can see here, it's just gone back to one tag firing because the form has reset and no submission has been made. So this is like the second session and this is the first one. So that is all working as intended. Okay, so let's do a second scenario. Let's say instead of tracking a form submission when the submit button is clicked, how do we track a form submission if they then get sent to a thank you page instead? So instead of tracking when they click this submit button here, we track when the thank you page is actually loaded up. So I'll just show you an example of how it works currently. So if I fill this in with some test information, click submit, I get sent to a different page now. So if we go back to Google Tag Manager, we will create a second trigger this time. So go to triggers, go to new, and we'll call this thank you page. Click on trigger configuration. And instead of doing form submission, the form submission trigger type, we will do page view instead. So click on this, and then instead of being on all page views, we only want to do it on some page views. Click on this drop down here, and we will do page path. And again, we'll do the condition as contains, and the URL of the thank you page is 𝗪𝗏.𝑐𝑜.uk/thank you. But again, because it's page path, we only need everything after the .co.uk of the domain. So if we remove this, keep it as /thank you/ and click save, like so. Go to tags, and we will adjust this Google Ads form submissions tag. So if we click on edit, we will remove this one, which is for the form submission trigger type. Click on edit, and then we will add the thank you page or page view thank you page trigger that we just made. Click save. And again, we will click on preview. Go back to the same landing page. As you can see, Tag Assistant is loaded. Go back to the Tag Assistant page. Only one tag is fired, which is the conversion linker, and we still have the Google Ads form submissions tag unfired. So we'll fill out the form. Click submit. We'll get sent to the thank you page. And if we go back to Tag Assistant, so this has loaded the session of the thank you page here. So we've got the GTM page, which is where the form was loaded. Again, it's just one tag fired here. And now if I go into this summary page here for the thank you page, you can see that both tags for the conversion linker and the Google Ads form submission tag has fired because this page contains /thank you in the page path. So again, I can click on the Google Ads form submissions tag, click show more, and you can see the conversion ID is there and the conversion label. The conversion ID is just showing the variable name, but if I click on when the tag was actually fired, so this is for container loaded, click on this and click show more. Yeah, you can see that the conversion ID, the actual value, is actually showed here, which again is working correctly. Okay, so now that we've confirmed that the Google Ads conversion tracking is working for form submissions, whether it's from a form submission button click or whether they get sent to the thank you page, we can now confidently push these changes live to the container. So in its current state, it's only working in the preview mode that we just tested out. So it's not actually working in your live Google Tag Manager container. So that means if you had Google Ads running right now, you had people actively clicking on your ads and going to your landing pages, these conversion tags will not actually work because they aren't officially pushed to the live container. So to push these changes live, all you need to do is click the submit button here. You can give this a version name if you want to, with a description. So we can just call this version 1. Click publish, and then Google Tag Manager will publish these changes to the live container. So as you can see here, we have 2 tags added, 2 triggers, and then 6 variables. One more thing as well to note. So for this Google conversions action that we just made, if I click on done here, since we don't need these tag manager instructions anymore for the conversion ID and form submission, or sorry, conversion label, you'll see that there's a status section here for the conversion action. So when you create a brand new conversion action, the status of it will always be inactive, like this red tag here, which means it's currently not working, or Google can't detect that there is a tag for it, which indicates that it will be working. But as you can see here, because we just did the preview mode in Google Tag Manager and tested that the form submission does actually work, even though it was in a test environment, you can see that its status has changed to no recent conversions. So Google has actually identified that the tag is actually working and data is being sent to Google Ads. Again, even though it was in a test environment. But now that we've pushed it live, and assuming we're sending live traffic to the landing page and people are actually filling out the form, this should eventually populate with conversion data. So just to clarify, enhanced conversions here, this is enhanced conversions for web, and enhanced conversions for leads is actually offline conversion tracking, which is something a bit different. It's where you... Hey guys, Patrick Sam here from 𝗪𝗵،𝗁, and welcome to the third and final module of the Google Ads conversion tracking for lead generation. In this module, we will be covering layering on enhanced conversions for web, also known as 𝗬𝗵𝗁 for short. Again, just to quickly summarize what we've gone through in this course. So in part 1, we covered the basics of Google Tag Manager. In part 2, we covered Google Ads conversion tracking for form submissions. And in this last module, part 3, we will be covering layering on enhanced conversions for web, or 𝗬𝗵𝗁 for short. In this module, you will learn how enhanced conversions for web actually helps you to capture more data, how you can actually implement enhanced conversions for web yourself within Google Tag Manager, and finally, how you can debug and test that enhanced conversions for web actually is working correctly. So at the end of this module, you should have a basic technical understanding of how enhanced conversions for web works, and you should also be able to confidently implement this yourself inside of Google Tag Manager. So yeah, let's jump in. So first and foremost, what is enhanced conversions for web? So enhanced conversions for web is a way to track additional conversions that you would have otherwise lost. Because there's many ways people can kind of fall out of your conversion tracking. Sometimes they might have ad blockers, for example. Sometimes certain scripts might not load. There's a bunch of different reasons why. So it's a way to potentially capture additional data. It also sends first-party user-provided data from your website to Google. The data is then used to match your customers to Google's accounts, so Google's databases, and they can check whether that user was signed in and if they engaged with one of your ads. So examples of first-party user-provided data would be an email address and or phone number. There are other fields as well, like the address of the user, if it's like an e-commerce purchase. But in most cases, it will normally be either the email address or a phone number. And enhanced conversions is also a privacy-safe method, as the data is actually encrypted before it's sent over to Google using SHA-256. And that basically just takes an email address, for example, scrambles it into a random bunch of letters and numbers, and that is then sent over to Google. So you never send like someone's email address as plain text to Google so they can identify who that is. It's always hashed first, then sent to Google, and Google will then try and match that hashed email with an email in their database to see if that user was logged in and if they interacted with one of your ads. So here's kind of a visual representation of how this might look. This is pulled from one of Google's documentations. So in step 1, you can see a user is signed in to Google or YouTube. they watch a video, they click on one of your YouTube ads, they then get sent to your website. Maybe your form is on that page, on the landing page, or maybe they get sent to a different page, but then eventually find your form on another page. They fill it out. The email address is captured, it's hashed, and then sent securely to Google. So that's all happens when they send the form submission. And then that hash data is then finally checked by Google, and the conversion is counted and then reported in your account. Okay, so how do we actually layer on enhanced conversions for web inside of Google Tag Manager on our existing Google tag that we set up in Module 2? Well, let's jump in and see how you can do that. Okay, so before we jump into Google Tag Manager, there's a setting that we need to check first inside of our Google Ads account. So if you go to Google Ads and then go to the goal section on the left-hand side here, and then go to settings. And then if you see in settings here, there's a section called enhanced conversions. If we expand this, then we can see that we have enhanced conversions turned on here as the checkbox is ticked. If this is not actually ticked, then make sure you do tick it. And then for this option here, I would select Google Tag Manager, click Save, and now you should be good to go. Now there's also something here above it called Enhanced Conversions for Leads. This is slightly different to Enhanced Conversions here. So just to clarify, Enhanced Conversions here, this is Enhanced Conversions for Web, and Enhanced Conversions for Leads is actually offline conversion tracking, which is something a bit different. It's where you upload data offline to Google. So you could use something like a Google Sheet, but it's just a different method to what we are using, which is sending data online rather than offline. So you can ignore this one for now, although you could turn it on if you wanted to. So once you have this box here checked, and once you've got this set to Google Tag Manager, we can now move over to Google Tag Manager. If you remember, we have a very basic form here with a name, email address, and message field. Now, when a user fills in their email, we want to be able to capture that and then send that over to Google, and hashing it as well before we send it over, so it's encrypted data. Now, if I go into Google Tag Manager, we've got the form submission Google Ads conversion tracking tag that we set up in Module 2, and this fires on a form submission. Now, just to keep note on the Google Ads documentation for the method I'm about to show you, if you have a trigger that isn't a form submission, so for example, if you are tracking a thank you page, like I showed as an example in Module 2, it might not work properly if you use enhanced conversions, so the method I'm about to show you. As you can see here, there's a section here called set up automatic enhanced conversions with user provided data event tag. It says click the trigger configuration and set it to form submission, and it's got a note here. You must select form submission for enhanced conversions to work properly. So if you are using a thank you page and you follow the instructions I'm about to show you, and you find that the enhanced conversions isn't working, that's probably why, and you ideally need to switch to the form submission trigger type. Okay, so I'll jump back now to Google Tag Manager. So the first thing we want to do is to go to our Google Ads conversion tag that we set up earlier. We want to modify the tag configuration here. So inside this, there is a field called include user provided data from your website. So this is actually enhanced conversions for web. So if I tick this box, we will get a drop down box here, which says select user provided data variable. So there are no variables set here, so I need to create a new one. So I'll click new, and now it will create a new variable type of user provided data. So we can call this automatic collection. Come back here. Now there's two ways you can add user provided data. You can do it manually or you can do it automatically. I'm only going to show the automatic method because it's much simpler and easier to do. Manual configuration would be if you have email or phone number being pushed to the data layer, for example, and then you can extract that in its own variable and then populate them here. Now, a lot of people don't know how to do this, or a lot of people don't have forms that can push this data to the data layer. There are other ways you can scrape the email address and phone number, but using the data layer is the most straightforward if you do go for the manual option. Now, if you have a web developer, you might be able to set up the manual configuration if they can assist you in helping push that data to the data layer. But as I said, for this course, I'm just going to show you the automatic collection example. So instead of having this selected as manual, click on automatic collection here. You don't need to tick anything else. You can leave this as is and then click save here. And as you can see, we have the box ticked of include user provided data from your website. And we've set it to the variable that we just made, the user provided variable called automatic collection. And that's basically it for the enhanced conversions for web. So we now click save and we're now good to go. You'll also see as well, if we go to the variables section, and if we go to user defined variables, it's created an additional variable here that we just made, which was the automatic collection. So if you ever needed to modify this for future reference, you can find it here. And as you can see, it's got the options that we just gave it. Okay, so the final step is to test and debug that the enhanced conversions for web is actually working. So we'll go to the preview mode again, go to the landing page that the form is on, wait for it to load up. Check tag assistance, looks good. And again, the conversion linker tag is firing on all pages as it should. And then the Google Ads form submission tag hasn't fired yet because we haven't submitted a form yet. So we will fill this form in quickly with some test data, test.roughly.co.uk, then just add a message and then click submit. Go back to the tag assistant tab. And as you can see, the Google Ads form submission tag has been fired. Now again, if I click on this, click on show more, you can see we have CSS provided enhanced conversion value. It's pulling in the automatic collection tag here. And you can see here that the include user provided data from your website is set to true. So this is actually automatically now scraping the email address from the form that we just submitted, and enhanced conversions for web should be working. Okay, so one final thing on the enhanced conversions for web. Another way to check if your enhanced conversions for web is working is to go to the goals page again inside of your Google Ads account, go to summary, and then go to the diagnostics tab, which is right next to the conversion goals. So click on diagnostics. You'll have an overview section here, and it should say enhanced conversions is working or not. I will say give it around 24 to 48 hours to propagate. Sometimes it can take some time. It's not instant. And it also depends on the volume of conversions you're tracking. If you're only getting a handful of conversions per week, then it might take a bit extra time. If you're getting a bunch of conversions, per day, it should work quite quickly. As you can see here, it says all enhanced conversion actions are active, and you can even click the see details to see some more details on like the conversion actions, for example, that are picking up enhanced conversions. And yeah, that's just an easy way to check and make sure that things are actually working as intended. And yeah, that is the end of module 3 and the end of the course on conversion tracking fundamentals for lead generation. Now you should be confident in Google Tag Manager, implementing a conversion tag for Google Ads tracking, and also layering on enhanced conversions for web. If you follow all of the steps in all 3 modules, you should have an account that runs well and tracks conversions effectively. And yeah, if you are a business that is running Google Ads and you would like an audit and some feedback on the campaigns and ads you're running, please do check out our free marketing plan. You can find more at roughly.co.uk, and there's also links in the description. And if you stuck around to the end of the video, and if you watched all of the modules, thank you so much for watching. Please do drop a like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Cheers. Bye.